So I'll just introduce myself quickly. My name is Stephanie, and I'm really excited to get to come to this weekend, and I'm really sorry to miss the morning bit of it. I was working and I did a mad dash on a train from Essex all the way down here, and so I'm here now, so that's really nice. This is Amy.
Yeah, I'm Amy. Yeah.
And we're just going to have a small piece of time this afternoon because we both came across the principles in the last couple of years. So we have been to things like this and listened to people like these guys and gone, oh, that sounds quite good. What are they talking about? And so we thought it'd be nice to share our experience of sort of certain areas of our life before experiencing and learning about the three principles, and then that process and the way life looks now, and what is what are the kind of main things around that, and hope that some of that will be useful or resonate or chime with people here in terms of their experience of learning about the principles and what they're getting out of it.
Sorry to be a killjoy, but I actually came here like late as well, but
Sure.
I don't actually know what the principles are.
Oh no, I've got to describe it.
So,
I thought I'd got out of that by coming late. No, that would be lovely. I should do
I
that.
was listening to you two speaking about, well, I understood what you were talking about, but
Yeah.
I didn't have that reference.
Yeah. Well, we could say that, couldn't we?
We could.
Would you like me to say that? Would you like to share? I don't mind.
Yeah, go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the three principles are a way of it describing how human beings experience life, basically. And it's a way of describing the psychological, spiritual systems that enable us to experience life consciously, and also kind of create life consciously, I suppose, in our experience. And the three things that we point to in the three principles when it comes to kind of understanding how we are in reality, or what we perceive to be reality, are, well, firstly, we talk a lot about thoughts. We talk a lot about thinking. Because one of the things that we look at and we introduce is the possibility that what we are experiencing in a moment-to-moment basis is our thoughts and is our thinking. And that is something which seems like, perhaps when you first hear it, really unlikely, because you think, gosh, I went out and someone shouted at me and I was upset. So what caused it was that guy shouting. And then when you look at it and you think, although one day somebody shouted at me and it didn't bother me at all because I happened to be in a good mood or something, that's when it gets kind of interesting. And that's the sort of direction that we look at when we think about how are we actually experiencing reality and what are we actually experiencing. The second thing is consciousness, which is really just a way of describing the experience of aliveness, the experience of not being inanimate, as it were. So it's really what enables us to experience anything. We are awake. There is a thing within us that is life, and that energy is what allows us to experience our thoughts. And the third one, which I've left till last because it is interesting to explain, is mind, is what we call mind. And that really points to the energy behind life, the energy that kind of creates and sort of stimulates all life and all things, really. So it's like it's like when somebody is it's like when we're born, there is a point at which we don't exist, and then there is a point at which we do. And at that point, the kind of energy behind life has sprung into a new form, which is ourselves, whatever we look like. So that is kind of, what do you think, guys? How does that sound? Does that sound okay? Right. Now, people work with the principles for like years and years and years, and like many, many years, and it seems to be, it's always a journey of unveiling and experiencing a slightly deeper insight into the principles behind existence. So it's not like something anybody kind of gets in I get that now, I'll write it down and that's it. It's more like a direction to look in, and then a gradual deepening of understanding, I suppose. So it's a good thing to explain, to kind of frame, but it doesn't really matter if that was all gobbledygook. Don't worry about that. And it doesn't matter if it's something you resonate with or not. It's like a starting point, I suppose, the description. Does that help at all? Yeah, it's nodding, okay.
I don't understand the third one yet.
Yeah. So,
Do you not understand the third one? Well, if you understand it in the next hour, would you like to explain it to me?
Yeah.
I think it's just that we're alive.
Yeah.
And it depends on what you want to believe. I mean, you can believe in God, you can believe in...
Do you mean like someone has an energy?
That,
Like
no,
sometimes there are some people who you can just feel.
No, just that there is an energy around us. I mean, if you look at quantum physics, it would say that even though it looks as if there's something between me and you, there isn't. We are touching each other, but it's...
Talking about the Higgs boson.
Yeah.
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 We're going down that route.
That-
I'm glad it's my turn.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, but no, go with that. Yeah, so basically the fact that there is an energy around us that's keeping us alive, that I'm still at the stage where questioning where thought comes from, but possibly it comes from this same energy.
It's like, I suppose it is just like, it's like life. It's the life force. And it's the thing which, when somebody is alive, you can see in them, even if they're asleep. I don't know, this is a bit of a morbid route to go down, but I don't know if you've ever seen a dead body. But when you see a dead body, all of the particles of that body are like it's exactly the same a millisecond after passing, but it is entirely different because something is left. There is now an absence of something that was there, which is like the kind of life spirit. So that is kind of what we're pointing to. It is the thing which is not divisible to any part of our body, to any part of our experience, situation, history, physical presence. It's the thing behind that that's coming through us. And some people call that, like, all humanity over the history of humanity have sort of seen that is the case, and they've had a story about it, and they've had a myth about it, or some people call it God, some people call it spirit, some people call it energy. There's whole ways of describing it, but I think the fact that all groups of human beings over the history of time have seen something about life that is more than just the combination of particles and atoms that we have and are kind of moving around. So it's that energy, I suppose, that we're referring to when we say mind. So, I've gone to something a bit easier.
Do you want to talk about before the principles?
So, yeah, before I came across the principles, it was really simple. So I was really interested to come to this session today because I know the kind of overall theme is around, tell me what the overall theme is around, Steve. It's
Beyond anxiety.
Beyond anxiety. And there's like something about self-esteem in there as well, isn't there? It's like, is that right? Yes.
Yeah.
Good, I didn't make it up. So I came across the principles about 2 years ago. Now, rewind to an undisclosed number of years ago when I was born. When I was growing up, I had absolutely through the bottom of the floor low self-esteem and confidence, like really, really low. And I was really, really bullied at school. And I was thinking on the way in, because I was thinking about self-esteem and anxiety, that I was really bullied and I had such low self-esteem. It was like the known thing in my class. It was the known thing that I was like the lowest of the low in the class. I was like the kind of, people would say, I would sit next to you, but then people will think that I like you, and then I'll be in that really bad group that you're in of like just being awful. And I remember there was this one girl that used to really, I don't know, I'm laughing. There's this one girl who used to really bully me, and she, I remember she got this new bag, and she said to me, don't touch my bag, because it would be like I would contaminate it. And I remember thinking, I better not touch that bag, because I thought my status in life was lower than the bag. Right? So I really felt like my self-worth and my inner, humanness was quite a few degrees below a lump of plastic, which was this bag. So that was like where my thinking was about my self-esteem. And then over the years, as I kind of grew up, I sort of understandably had lots of thoughts and lots of thinking about being kind of no good, and like very like low, sort of bad person, and somebody that wasn't worth anything. And at that time, I thought that was true. I thought that was real. So that looked like real life to me. So that's what I was contending with. And out of that space of feeling like this is what I was like, and this is what life, not only me, but the rest of the world, we'd all decided between us that I was completely rubbish, and I had to just kind of be like that. Like I had quite a hard time really in life, because everything that I was doing was coming from this space of having really low self-esteem, having really low confidence, and being like, lowest of the low. So it was like life was quite a battle. So I was always trying to do things to claw my way out of this level and to justify my existence. So I worked really, really hard, and I did a job for like 12 years, and I really pushed myself, and I was really ambitious. And then after 12 years, I realised like I didn't really like that job. I hadn't noticed that I didn't like it, because all that mattered to me was trying to justify myself. And like I used to drink way too much. I used to drink like a lot. And I was thinking back the other day, and I was thinking that I was always either drunk or about to have a drink or hungover, or a combination of those three things. So throughout my 20s, like I was really tired, really hungover, really drunk, working really hard, I had enormous amounts of anxiety. Like I would be at work on a Friday, and somebody would say something to me that I felt was them saying I'd done something wrong, or I would say something and I would think they might take offence. And I would spend the whole weekend obsessing about that word that I'd said, about that sentence. It was exhausting. I was really, I would really struggle, because I would have thought I'd have done something wrong, somebody would think something bad about me, and I would be just consumed with that. So I lived like that for about 10 years. And at the end of that, sort of understandably, I was a kind of bit of a breakdown really, because it was such a tiring way of living life. It was just exhausting. And so I'd had depression really all my life up until that point. And I'd had all of this, just finding life really hard. And I had a sort of little breakdown, but I was quite modest. I just went to my boss's room and I said, whatever you have to tick it. I'm not well, I'm going home. That's it. I can start crying if you want. I can tell you why if you want, or I just sign what you need me to sign. And I really recognised that I was really struggling and I couldn't cope with life anymore. And I went to the doctors and I got on antidepressants. And around that time, I started listening to somebody who is a really famous person who teaches the 3 principles, and he had a radio show, and it's a guy called Michael Neal, who is it's kind of well-known coach, and he has a radio show on the internet. And I used to listen to this radio show, and I had no idea what he was talking about, really, and I had no idea about the 3 principles as a kind of like a community of people that are exploring how we understand reality. But I just felt really calm when I listened to it. And it was almost like something went off in my head, and I just forgot who I was, what I thought about myself, what my situation was, and I just felt incredibly peaceful. And because that was such a curious feeling to me, because I had no memory of feeling like that, I must have felt like that when I was born, but I had no memory of it. In fact, my mum says that when I was born, I used to look at her like in an anxious way and say, like I was saying to her, "You're going to drop me, aren't you? You're going to drop me." so clearly, either she perceived me to be anxious as a baby, or I was a bit anxious. But anyway, who knows? But I just had no memory of feeling like that, and so I just listened. I just kept listening, and I kept going to things, and I read everything, with no sense of understanding, but just a sense that when I experience people talking about it, my mind and my thinking seemed to slow down, and I just seemed to experience something completely other, sort of completely different to my experience to date. And as I started to learn about the principles and kind of explore a bit deeper, I started to get insights, which is often the way people in the 3 principles talk about the journey, is that you hear it and it sort of is really hard to understand, and then you start to get a personal insight into yourself and into your life. And I started to get insights, and the insights I started to get were that everything that I felt bad about was being created by my thinking, even though I could talk to somebody and they would go, "Yeah, I can understand why it makes sense, you're really bullied and all these other things happen, I can understand." But the fact that I was living in pain in that moment that those things weren't happening was coming from the fact that I was thinking those things, and I thought those thoughts were real. I thought they were real, rather than thoughts that will come and go. So that was one thing. And the second thing I got a sense of, I got an insight around, was that absolutely everybody at that principle level is the same. Absolutely everybody, underneath all their personality and their feelings and their thoughts, underneath there is a space of a kind of consciousness, which is that which has come from the universal consciousness of mind. And it was unbelievably reassuring to start to see that a little bit, because even though I still felt pain and I still had thinking, there was something else that I could go back to, or that I could remember, that was actually part of who I was and who everybody is, that created like a safety blanket, that I never had to feel that bad again, because even though my feelings might go up and down, there was something else in that equation, like something underneath it, that was more real than anything I was thinking in the moment. So those two were probably the most profound insights, and loads of other little things and loads of ups and downs, but experience of seeing those two things had completely altered where I came from in life and my broad day-to-day experience of life. So after a few months, and I went back to my doctors and I went to see my health person, mental health nurse I think they're called. She was really surprised at how well I was. She was really like, she said to me, you were really intense before. You're really like, this is good, and And my husband even said, because I'd always had depression since I met him, he said, "Isn't it funny, you had depression?" And it was like, because I'd always had it since I could remember, it was like people would say, "You just always will have depression and you just learn to manage it." He said, "Isn't it funny, you've had this miraculous recovery?" And I thought, yeah, and I kind of didn't even notice that I had, but I thought, yeah, that is something which is available, I think, to us as humans. And this is something that I've learned through exploring the 3 principles, is that nothing is fixed. Something could have happened every day for 40 years in terms of your feeling and your experience. And it doesn't have to be the thing that you think and feel the next day. And like nothing is, the game is never over. The book is never written. Things are open. And the potential for human beings to have different experiences is infinite. So that is a very probably gobbledygooky, potted history of my kind of prior to the 3 principles and then experiencing it and some of the shifts that I've had. And I just wanted to say that you know, has been really amazing, and it is an enormously profound difference. But it doesn't mean that I don't feel up and down and normal and like everybody else. And after Amy's shared her story, we're going to talk a bit more about that together. Yeah. So I don't need to think I'm happy all the time.
No,
that would be
gonna
misleading.
Talk about last couple of months later.
But it does mean that it's like the game has changed. The game of life has changed. And that is interesting. That is interesting and liberating and a fun thing to be looking at for me. So I'd love to, so why don't you share, and if you would like to, then we can go from there.
So I suppose actually up until about 3.5, I don't remember it much, but I was told, I actually talked to my mum and dad about 6 months ago because I really wanted to know about my childhood. And they said that I was quite confident, I'd go out and do things, I'd be like the person that's in the crowd and I'd be talking and there'd just be this little person running around and I'd probably talk over everyone's conversation and everything else. And she said that kind of stopped around going to school age. I think I felt it a little bit before. And my brother was born when I was 2.5. And I think up until then I felt really, really special. And I obviously don't know because I don't remember it, but I can just see that maybe I felt really, really special and that I had all of this attention. And then suddenly the attention went. And I got to school age and I remember my first day at school and I was so scared. And so shy, and I didn't really have any friends at primary school. Really, I was bullied by most of the class up until I left when I was 10.5. I do remember a stage when I was about 7 years old when I'd literally get to the school gate and suddenly I'd get a headache or a stomachache or I'd feel sick, and Mum would then take me home. But after this happened for about 2 or 3 weeks, she'd kind of get to the point of, well, actually, I need to be at work. So it kind of felt as if she'd given up on me as well. And one day I was literally crying and screaming to go into school. And she took me into the head teacher's office. And she said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh, I'm being bullied. And I feel completely useless, worthless, and everything." And she didn't really do anything. We had a staff assembly about bullying, which kind of then made it worse. But so yeah, I was up until about 10.5. So I wouldn't say it was. I wouldn't say I had an unhappy childhood though. It was like out of school. It's really strange. It's like periods of time where it would be really, really upset and like really, really sad, and then periods of time within the same day where it would be, I'd be semi-happy. And yeah, academically and every like milestone and everything, it always took me a lot longer. And my brother is an overachiever. So at the age of 6, when I learnt to ride a bike, he was riding a bike at 3.5. And I just always felt as if, even though there was 2.5 years between us, he'd always be better than me. And I always felt that at school, like, I was never really diagnosed with anything, but it was like they couldn't diagnose me, but I was completely broken and worthless, and I couldn't achieve academically. And it wasn't until I was 13 that I was told that I wouldn't actually be able to pass any GCSEs, I wouldn't be able to do the national curriculum, and I wouldn't be able to achieve anything. And I think that was the first time that I felt what I now call as depression. And I really didn't do anything for a year. I was just like, well then why am I at school if I'm not going to achieve anything? Why do I need to sit through these classes? I'm not doing any homework, I'm not doing anything. And there is things on my, because obviously they write letters if you don't do anything. Amy thinks that she's using her inability to be able to progress in a curriculum as an excuse for not doing homework. And I think yeah, and then at the age of 15 was the first time that I felt really, really suicidal, and to the point of, well, what's the point? And it was kind of a turning circle. I kind of can see, and I'll go on to later what I could see, but it was a turning point of actually, I can achieve and I can do this. And with a tutor, English, maths, science tutor outside of school, I did achieve. I got 5 A to C's, including 1 A and 2 B's. And I got 2 awards for the fact that I'd achieved the difference between what I was supposed to get at GCSE, which was a G. I got awards for how much I did achieve. And it was just like, it was like there was a switch which said, I'm going to prove you wrong. But I thought, I've gone with that thought all the way up to 18 months ago. And it's hell. It's proper hell. So after that, after I finished school, I went to college. And the first 6 months were absolutely great. It was like, I think my parents had quite a lot of structure where me and my brother would cycle to school, but that would be it. And we couldn't go out apart from that. We could, but I think in my head it was like we couldn't. Because Mum told me like, oh, I never told you that you couldn't. But in my head it was like we couldn't go out of school, we couldn't do anything. So I didn't really socialise with anyone. I did have friends in secondary school. And yeah, so the first 6 months of college were absolutely fantastic. I loved it. I was like, you'd have free periods in the day, so you'd have like 2 hours off. You could go into town, buy Burger King. What was Burger King? It wasn't that Burger King. And then I'd also started working part-time at a supermarket, and it meant that I had money, so I could actually go and buy Burger King. Not that my parents didn't give me extra pocket money, but it wasn't that much. And I don't know, it gave me more freedom than I'd ever had before. One day I started talking to somebody at work, and I talked to him for about 3 days, and every day he'd walk me back home, which was just like literally around the corner. And on the 4th day it was very, very different. And he said, would you mind walking me home? And I said, oh, not at all. So innocently I was walking down the road with him, and we were just talking about, I can't even remember what we talked about, it was 13 years ago now, I can't remember what we were talking about. And we got to this canal bridge, and he goes, well, I'm going down there. So I went down with him, and to cut a long story short, he attacked me, and I was pretty much left to die. He beaten me up as well as done other things to me. And I remember laying on the ground, and I've only had this voice 3 times. It's a very, very strong, powerful voice. And it basically kept telling me to get up. It was a get up, get up. And I kept trying to tell it no. I was like, no, I'm not getting up, I can't get up, I hurt too much. And so the next thing, if I'm honest, I remember is actually being in the shower at home. I don't remember getting up. I don't remember walking home, which is over 2 miles by then. And I remember being in the shower. I then got out of the shower, put bandages around both my. Well, don't want to go into it too much, but I fixed myself up. And my parents then came home, and it was like I started pretending that I was the person I was. And I went and put on long sleeve clothes. I'd worn long sleeve clothes. I never used to wear long sleeve clothes, just to be able to hide everything. And my mum was like, "Oh, are you okay?" And I was like, oh, "No, I think I've got a bit of a stomach ache. That's all, Mum. I'm okay. I just need to get some food and then go to bed." So I did that, and I don't remember much of that evening, but I do remember thinking I've got to do something about work, but I'd been knocked unconscious, so I was kind of a little bit out of it as well. So I went to sleep. Woke up the next morning, and I thought, actually, I really do need to do something about work because I can't see him again. So I went to work, and I don't know, a part of me now, even then, there was a part of denial going on, like it didn't happen. And I went into work and accused him of a few things, but not actually what he did to me. And the manager told me that his girlfriend was pregnant and he was going through a really hard time, and did I need to pursue this? I said, yeah, I do. And she said, well, you need to talk to your parents. So I went home and I told my mum what had happened, and to me, and I know this isn't what it is now, but to me it was, you don't believe me. I've told you this little bit and you don't believe me. And I sorted that bit out. The next day I went to college, I got to the gates and I had to go through a park to be able to get to college. I got to the gates and I couldn't do it. I was so anxious and so scared. I had to walk the long way around, which is about 3 miles longer, to be able to get to college. So every day I was late. And I was quite scared. I still went to work and he worked there, but I sort of went to where I worked and then went out during my breaks. And it just got worse and worse, to the point where 18 months ago, when I was 18 I was put on antidepressants, and that was the start of my mental health field. I then, for all of this, I'm doing a full-time job. After I left college, I went and joined the ambulance service. I worked for the ambulance service up until, I think, 4 years ago. Maybe 5 years ago. And I think when I left there, I realised that I had a really, really big problem with not only that, as well as depression and maybe something else, because I really wasn't feeling. I felt like I wanted to kill myself every day. And I went there and they referred me. And to cut a long story short, I was in mental health services for 9 years. And during that time I'd go through periods of being okay, I'd go through periods of feeling really sad, I'd go through periods of deep depression where I'd literally just want to die every day, every minute. And they did kind of space out towards the end, so we're talking about probably 3 years ago. They did start spacing out between times, so it would happen like every 6 months. I'd end up somewhere. So once it was on top of the roof of a building at work, and the last time was in a motorway bridge. And I was just like, I don't want this anymore. I really don't. I can't kill myself. There's something inside me that just won't let me kill myself. But I don't want to be alive either. This is like worse than what could happen. And I was going through therapy at that stage of like, if you want to change, you've got to change for yourself. And nobody really, and that people can help you, but unless you want to change for yourself, you're not going to do it. And I went into that kind of mode, and I was like, right, okay. And I was sat on my bed with my best friend. We'd had a half a bottle of wine, and we made this list of, I think it was 23 things in the end, that if I changed them, that I'd have like a happy life, and this would be quite cushy. And we were sat there, and I said, how do I not mess up these 23 things and make it worse? It's a bit ironical, but how do I do it so I don't make it worse? And she goes, well, why don't you go and see your private psychotherapist again? And I said to her, well, I don't know if I need to, because it's not about my past, it's about what's happening now. And I said, like, we used to have a family friend that was a life coach, but obviously I couldn't go to him because he's like a family friend. But what if I did life coaching instead? And she said, well, do it. So we kind of had that conversation, and I ended up Googling life coaching in the place that I lived, and this guy appeared. Actually 23 guys appeared, but this guy shone out at me. Wow, this is the guy I want to work with. And I actually had on his like blurb, do you want a life that's wow? And I remember saying to her, I just want a life. And so I contacted him, I wrote a message on there, and my hand started shaking. I was like, I can't do it. And it was like something was telling us to do it, and we were both like, we really should do it. And then her dog jumped on my lap, and it pressed my hand, and it was gone. And it was just like, just if her dog hadn't jumped on her lap, where would I be today? So I had this first meeting with my life coach, and it was weird. It was like I went in there and I showed him some of my therapy work, which was a lot around CBT, so creating more scenarios to, like, thinking of a thought. What is the thought that you're thinking? And then producing more, like, I could do this instead, and have a list of 10 things that I could do instead. And he said, what if that original thought's not real? And I remember saying to him, so what? I can throw stones at thoughts, like imaginary stones, and just not believe anything. He said, well, yeah. And I kind of walked out and I was like, this is a bit weird. Something feels different, and I'm smiling and I can't work out why. And I just thought, I'm not going to think about it too much. And it wasn't until 3 days later, and I was telling Rudy earlier on, that I realised that I hadn't self-harmed for 3 days, that I hadn't overeaten for 3 days, and that I hadn't felt sad for 3 days. And I still couldn't work out why. And I remember texting him saying those things, and I was like, and also I have quite a lot of pain as well. And I said to him, can you think pain? And because I've got psoriatic arthritis, and 3 years ago, I was told within 6 months I'd be in a wheelchair. Today I run a mile a day, I go swimming, I do yoga and Pilates, and I work in operating theatres for 10 hours on my feet. So I've been told pretty much all my life that I'm not going to achieve, and that I'd be broken and everything else. And it's just, it really is. I want to swear. Pure rubbish. it's just not true. Everybody is perfect. And if it wasn't for the thoughts in our head, we're not broken. We're fine. We really are perfectly okay. What I do want, some of the changes, and there's been a lot of changes, and there was your question around siblings and stuff like that. I kind of touched on it a little bit about my brother not overachieving and stuff, like overachieving above me and stuff. But I always felt as if there was some distance between me and my brother, and it did in my head, and it was in my head. It was resentment. Why does he have to be the fit one? Why does he have to be the skinny one? Why does he have to be the attractive one? Why does he have to be the overachiever? These are all true, by the way. But why did I have to be the fat, short, unintelligent one amongst us? And it did put friction against it. And I don't know what's happened over the last 18 months. But I actually feel love for my brother. And all that resentment and everything just went away. And it's strange. It's like we do totally different kinds of jobs. He works in the city, earns lots of money. I care for people and earn nothing, pretty much. But it's kind of, there is no boundary anymore. It's just me and him. And it's like, I don't know, I can just feel the love. And the same thing for my parents. Like, it took me probably 6 months in the principles to kind of realise that how much thinking I had about my mum and that time and everything else. I don't know, I just feel overwhelming love from them since I broke up with my partner, which would be 18 months ago. It's 20 months since I was in the principles and 18 months since I left my partner. I left my partner because basically for 8 years, well at least 5 of them, I was with him because he protected me. He actually controlled me, but to me it was protection. And I've lived with my parents since. Financially, I was over 20 grand in debt. I have a loan which I signed, which was his, which I don't pay, and I don't have any other debt. And I've got savings, but I don't know how I got there. It's kind of like, I say to people like, Michael Neill describes it of living in the space where miracles happen. And it really does feel like that. It feels like miracles really have happened for me in the last 18 months. Things that I didn't think were possible have been possible. I just remember, like, 18 months ago, I couldn't walk more than 20 foot away from my car. And like 3 months later, I was in London on my own in the middle of Green Park. And I'm like, how did that happen? And it's just thought. It really is just, it really is like thought. And I suppose the other thing that we want to start talking about what we were going to talk about. Like basically, me and Stephanie have both been through a bout of crappy time, I suppose, in the last couple of months. After having the euphoric moments of the principles and everything going really, really well, we've both had bouts of not feeling too great. I never got as low as wanting to end my life. I can't. There's some kind of energy that's there that I can't get to that level. It just feels as if I physically couldn't ever get back there. But I have felt really, really low. And I could actually literally see during the day, because obviously you don't work on days, when you live in the present, it's moment by moment. I could see that it did rise and fall, but it wasn't rising and falling or staying at the same level as it was before. So like it would go into high consciousness and I'd stay there, and everything was great, like the first 6-7 months of the principles. But it was like a lower level all the time, and I really felt like the clouds had come over, and I kept saying to myself like, oh, you know, there's blue sky above those clouds. You know it's there, you can feel it, but I just physically couldn't get out of it. But there's this overwhelming sense of feeling okay with that. It's like, yeah, I feel really rubbish today, but I feel okay feeling rubbish.
Yeah, I think it's amazing really that when you talk to people that have, it just seems to be, for whatever reason, that when anybody is able to stop looking at what really feels like their reality and starts to look at what is potentially creating that reality, it is like enormously helpful. It is incredibly helpful, and it creates these kind of leaps in progression that are not in line with how long things are meant to take to recover, or how, you know, it should be. If you've had this experience, then you may always feel bad about it, or it should be, it takes this long to recover from X, Y, and Z. And it seems that when we look towards our actual kind of intrinsic kind of the spiritual system that we live in, those sort of boundaries don't really exist anymore, and you can experience enormous benefits from that approach. And a lot of a kind of typical experience, I think, is that, and my experience definitely, and it sounds like your experience, is that is so enormously liberating, and it frees up things that have been stuck for potentially many, many years. There's a kind of euphoria to that experience, and the first, I mean, I think we all, because we're all experiencing this all the time, it's just, you know, we all have insights, we all have moments in our lives where we feel really well in recovery anyway. You don't have to be looking at it to get that. But when you start to look at it, it's, for many people, that can magnify. And then we still live in the world. We still carry on living. And part of that experience of living is getting bogged down in things and getting tense about things and things looking very real and having really painful thoughts. And so it's not like, I'm sure tell me if I'm not saying what you think as well, but I don't think there's anyone that ever says, oh, it's amazing, you can look in this direction and then things are great and you don't feel bad anymore, you don't feel pain anymore. So it doesn't seem to work like that. But there's a different quality to the negative experience that you then sort of naturally go through in life. It's very hard to explain, but it's almost like there's a small space between you and your experience. And that space, sometimes it's quite big and you feel kind of really objective and really grey. And sometimes the space is really small and it's like, ooh, still feels kind of horrible. But just whatever amount that space is,
it's like,
it makes the world of difference.
It's like a safety net.
Yeah,
it really feels like a safety net. Mara Gleason describes it as a safety net.
Yeah.
That however bad you're feeling, there's always something there to stop it getting past a certain level, and that you're always okay.
And what's that something?
The principles. But it feels like it. It isn't like, when I say the principles, because I didn't know the principles were the principles for 4 months. It feels really strange to call it the principles. I'm much happier with a safety net because I just didn't know it was. And I also didn't know it felt like a safety net until I read well, she did it as an audio, but I had a transcription of the audio. And I was just like, yeah, it does. It feels like a trampoline. So sometimes you bounce on it and you go up, and other times you bounce and you just stay there. But actually, it's still there. Like the trampoline doesn't break.
It's really, yeah. It's almost like it seems to be that humans have two vantage points to look at their lives, and one of them, the one vantage point is being in it, and one vantage point is being outside of it looking in. And very often people meditate and they do lots of things because those processes of meditation or whatever it is that they're doing sort of slows down the thinking, and they start to get the opportunity to move vantage point from being in it to being outside, a kind of observer of it. And that is a very well-known phenomenon, isn't it? I think even just in everyday language, we were talking earlier about having arguments, and sometimes it's like in an argument something looks really real. So in an argument, this other human being in front of you is evil and they're really horrible, and then you walk away from the argument and then you just get distracted and you think about something else, and then you remember the argument and you think, that was a bit annoying, but it's not the worst thing any human being's ever done in history, whereas it really felt like it was at the time. So I think it's a very natural process for human beings to oscillate between being in their experience and being able to look at their experience from a more from a kind of a neutral vantage point, a vantage point of pure consciousness rather than involved consciousness.
I'm a little
Sorry.
bit confused because
Yeah.
I always thought being present was being in the moment, but you're suggesting not being present, but being present.
Yeah, so say more about that, sorry. Yeah.
It's gonna
You're
con-
suggesting being present in the moment, but still being present in the moment and being detracted from the moment.
Yeah, well, I definitely wouldn't suggest,
But
as in this is a good thing or this is a bad
That's
thing.
that's what it's. Is that what you're saying? I don't know. I know when I think of not being present, I think of maybe thinking of other things, but then also there's then I guess how I react to the moment.
Yeah.
Or maybe just not believing how you feel in that moment. And just think, do I really think this? Is this thought, or is this how I really feel?
Yeah, no, I mean, it really, I think the thing is that because when anybody describes, we're really describing something beyond description, so it's really difficult to not sound contradictory, because I think there is because there's so many ways that we talk about and describe our human experience, and we have to use words because that's what we've got. we don't have, I have a thought and I'll just put my hand on your head and you'll share that thought. And so just the process of putting it into words, it already gets a bit it gets a bit not pure, I suppose, move from intention. But I think it's a really good point that you make, and I think that what I'm describing is not so much not being present, but having a level of knowing or seeing that your experience is sometimes very clouded by thought, and sometimes there isn't a lot of thought, and you can be present in both of those spaces. But the space where it is less intense, the space where there is less fast or potentially painful thinking going on, is quite a fascinating space. And it's the space that you were talking, that Michael Neill talks about, the space where miracles happen, the space where you have a new perception or a new thought, the space where something different comes along that you haven't experienced before in that situation. And I think you can be present in both.
How is this different to, I was reading this, I was suggested this book called Ask, which is like acceptance and commitment. It's kind of like a model of mindfulness. How different? Is that the same kind of thing you're talking about?
It's really similar, I think. I won't speak for everyone, but I think that because over time it's always been of interest to human beings, like what's going on for them and how they experience life and act. Sorry, I haven't read it. I haven't read it, unfortunately.
Sorry. Anyway.
Yeah, no, neither have I. I was
I
going to
haven't
say
read
I
that.
can't really
So I don't know about that
comment
book.
because I don't know what the book's really about. Yeah.
But I think that every single endeavour to look at the human experience and at where we came from is sort of pointing in the same direction, and it's pointing in the direction of like what is real and what is elusive. You know, what is the human default and what is the aberration from that, you know. And so everything, like all religions and spiritual paths, have this similar seed running through it, I think. And I would describe it, just personally, I don't know if anyone else would, but I would describe the principles as a way of looking at that without any periphery conditions around it and without any assumptions and without any... It's a good idea to meditate for 10 minutes a day. It's like, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, who knows? But there's no agenda to create a certain way of life or a suggestion of how people should be. It's a kind of like a sort of clutter-free look at how human beings experience reality. So it will sound like other things, I think.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
look at the human
To be
experience.
honest with you, it's probably gone back. Like, Buddhism follows part of it. There's so many different fields that have always looked into the way this, not exactly this understanding, but different thoughts around this understanding have been around a lot longer than Sid's enlightenment moment. But yeah, I mean, yeah. You had a question.
No, I just wanted to say thank you both, and you especially, for sharing your painful story. It was very brave of you, and I think you're a very determined young woman.
Yeah, I feel a lot more like I can achieve a lot more than I used to.
You can.
Oh yeah, I do.
You've got a lot. You don't know the strength you've got inside you.
I still have Rudy's thought of I'm useless every time something doesn't achieve, though. I'm useless. Yeah. All right, I can feel that for a few hours if I want to. It really is that. It's like it's that bounded. It's like the resilience I always had, but it's like time frames of feeling whatever you feel don't feel as long.
But we're humans, so
Yeah.
you know, some days are
Absolutely.
good and some days are not good.
Yeah. Or even minute to minute. It can be rubbish in 1 minute and then absolutely fine in the next. Thank you.
So I have questions.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to, both of you, to realise the three principles had actually sunk in and made an impact?
3 days.
3 days.
As I said, like, for some reason I hadn't self-harmed, for some reason I hadn't overeaten, for some reason I wasn't attention seeking, and I didn't know why.
Okay.
And
So
I didn't
it
want to
was-
die.
So it was just almost like something that just clicked.
Yeah,
Right.
within those 2 hours of seeing my life coach, it just felt different. I had a smile on my face. I remember the message saying to him, I keep catching myself smiling. I've never done this before. Like, I'm pretty sure I smiled before, but I never really caught myself smiling.
See, I would say like a year. I mean, slow to catch on. But yeah, like a really long time. I started listening to it and getting a sense of it and getting interested and curious about it, and I just didn't tell anyone. I was like, this is my secret. And I went along I was in a group, and I went to this group. It was a course, and I met a guy there, and I was friends with him, and I never told him a word about what I'd learned. I just didn't, you know, and I just kind of I don't know what it was. It was just like I was in the closet. I was in the Three Principles closet. And then ages later, when I felt like I'd started to get my head around like a teeny tiny bit of it, like a minute fraction of understanding, I thought, wow, I'm going to tell everyone about this now. Brilliant. And then I went to call him up and I noticed that he had obviously come across it separately to me, way after me, and got it immediately and gone on this massive course, and he's now teaching it in the other side of the world. So it was like, whoom. And I met him and I said, oh, I'm really glad you're interested in this. I got into this then, and he said, why did you never tell me? Because for him, it was so immediate, it just was like totally common sense to embrace it. And for me, I was like, oh, this is nice. I'll just listen to it 1 hour a week and then go back to feeling rubbish. So it can be really different for everyone.
Because I thought it was interesting. You said you caught yourself smiling.
Yeah.
It's almost like I've heard this term, the observing self.
Mm.
It's like you know when you think about things that happen, you kind of think about them in third person.
Yeah,
Then
I
when you
think
think
for a
about the
period
currents
of
in
time
third
it did.
person.
For a period of time, because I was sort of putting that distance between me and my thoughts, which for me was throwing imaginary stones, it was semi like I was observing myself. And for a while, I don't know, I don't know quite what happened, but I just didn't believe exactly what the thought was. It was like, oh, I'm getting really, really angry now, I need to go and self-harm. And it was just like, feeling really, really angry now and I need to go and self-harm. Where's the emotion? But I would feel the emotion, but it's just like I didn't have to go through with it. And there would just be a complete absence. Like for those 3 days, there was a complete absence of all of it. I mean, the absence of thought is quite funny. It was like, I think it was about probably 2 hours ago when Jenny was speaking, and I just suddenly thought to myself, I haven't got any makeup on. And I was like, because makeup was always my mask. Like if I was talking, I'd have to wear makeup. And before, I used to have to always go and put makeup on before I went out, right? And so I'm sat there when Jenny's speaking, I'm like, concentrate on what Jenny's saying. I'm like, when was the last time I put makeup on? I don't think I've worn makeup a week. Like, this is weird. Where are my sunglasses? They were on my head this morning. I still don't know where they've gone. It's like I live in the moment and I really don't know what's happened in the moment before, because that's as far as I live now, where before it was always in the past. I never really worried about the future because I was going to die, so the future didn't really exist. But now, yeah, I live in the now, and I don't know. I think the future holds huge things, but I don't want to go into. I'm not processing. I don't process above now to find out what that is. So my life coaching sessions are quite funny now because it's going. It's just like, so what are we going to talk about today? Like, well, I don't really know what to do with my life anymore. Like, oh, the unknown. Like, yeah, but I could be sitting here in 6 years' time and still not know. It's like, eventually it will come to you, maybe one day. I'm like, all right, okay, all right, I'll keep doing what I'm doing because I'm quite enjoying my life as it is. Maybe that's enough. Any other questions anybody's got? Want to stir it up?
I'm still not sure how I would access the three principles. It's a bit, I know you said that it's hard to put into context.
Yeah.
But as a person with social anxiety,
Yeah.
you know, brilliant, it worked for you in like 2 hours. How could I get to that stage?
Yeah.
Is that even possible for me? Does that make sense? It's like
It's
trying to get my head
It's
around how
absolutely possible
yeah.
that it could take a year or it could take 1 minute.
I did feel better in that year. It was like a year of misery, and then whoa.
It was like a year of misery, but all these people
like
seem to be
gradual-
happy or okay.
got
So
there, and then-
I'll keep going at it just to see what happens.
I think it's so nebulous, the right word. I think that for such a long time I had, like I would say I have a really, 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 really small bit of understanding. And that really minuscule like pinhead of understanding has entirely changed the game. So it's like such a tiny amount is great. What I found is that to get that tiny amount, for a really long time I didn't have that, or I had half of that, or a quarter of that, or whatever. And the only thing that made the kind of evolution go in that way was that I kept listening to things and reading things and going to things and being in that space where we're kind of looking in this direction. And at some point of looking in that space, there is an insight or a different feeling. And I think the only way that I kept up being involved in things was I just chose things that I enjoyed and that I liked. And sometimes I tried and that didn't work very well, but sometimes I managed to relax and not really try that hard. And normally I managed to relax and not try that hard because I just found that the way that person spoke was really fun. Or I just found there was something I really enjoyed about listening to things while I was doing the housework. So the kind of counterintuitively, the sort of journey is like counterintuitive to anything else that you learn, which is that it's like the enjoyment. It's like the enjoyment and the just kind of, I'm going to do this just because it's just a fun thing to do, without the pressure of needing to achieve a certain amount of learning from it, seems to be really helpful. It seems to be the way that a lot of people kind of go through it, really. What do you think about that?
Well, all I was going to say is I think I just said that I got the principles.
That's all right. Maybe you have.
I've got what I've got. I imagine if I get invited back, I'll be sitting here in a year's time telling you something completely different.
Yeah.
Because I just see different people and how they progress year on year with the principles, and things just change. Like, I do remember this one story, I will be quick, but my best friends, and I hadn't seen her for about 4 years. So she saw me at my worst and then saw me last year, and she goes, "What's happened to you? You seem so calm. You were just sitting there still. Before I'd be like this." And she goes like, and what I didn't realise was I was on quite a lot of medication, and she said your head just couldn't stay still. It was like this. And it was really hard to keep up with you and have a conversation because your head would just be all over the place. I never knew that. It's just like, what kind of person works for the ambulance service and works for the NHS when... But hey, I did my job and I've never had any complaints. But yeah, I think my patients get a much better person now than they had before.
Can I also say that we've created a resource called 3principlesmovies.com, and it's
It's great.
hundreds and hundreds of hours, literally hundreds of hours of different people talking about this, like within different fields, but also just general interviews. And we've kind of bumped into people at the last conference who've never been to a physical training before or event, but just watched the movies, and it has utterly transformed everything. And it's certainly not going to happen for everybody like that, as you can tell from the difference of when people kind of get the pinprick of it, so to speak. But it's just great because you can just look at it after work on your lunch break. You can just listen to an interview and then have another listen another time. And you can download audios on it now and watch videos and download those. And there's like a social map on there, so you can find other people in your area who may be interested, and you can kind of catch up for a cup of coffee or something. And again, I was chatting to somebody, I don't think it was somebody in here, and they found 3 people within 10 miles of them they didn't know existed, so they just emailed them and they're catching up. So it's just a free online resource for people who want to look in this direction. And you know, like the very skillfully said, the more you stay in the conversation, the more you're just interested and you listen or you read, but lightly, not like I must get this, just kind of in your leisure time really. There's a way in which you just start seeing more. And the funny thing is, you don't know that you've seen more. Like, again, listening to this, I didn't know that much has changed until you know it's changed. It just kind of happens to you rather than making it happen to you. It just happens to you. It's really interesting.
It's so weird.
What's the name of the website?
Your question is such a good question, because
Yeah,
and it's so true what you said, because my journey of sort of seeing more is got, like, if you did a graph, you'd have me, the line of me trying, going like that, and then the line of me getting everything going like that, and then I stop trying, and then the learning goes like this, right? And you know, I take a long time to learn, so I still try and get nowhere, and then relax and go, oh, that's nice. But like just recently, in the last couple of weeks, I felt like I'd really plateaued, and it was starting to become a chore, because I thought I had this, like, I don't have depression anymore, I don't have that level of low self-esteem. I've got this kind of safety net that, you know, I can have a degree of space between my experience, and that's great, and that's as much as I'm going to get, because I've carried on trying, and that's where I'm staying. And then I just kind of ditched the lot and forgot about it, and then I had this massive change of seeing that was huge, and I'd literally just totally stopped trying at that point. So it is fascinating. It's very hard to not try, because it's a real human instinct.
I love the way you said that. So great. So true, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so like that. It's just hilarious. So I think what seems to be a real common theme for people is that when they really, if you listen to somebody, their website is so awesome. I'd so massively recommend it. And one of the great things about it is there are so many people talking about it, and they're all really different. So if you listen to somebody and it's just think about, like, it just annoys you the way they're talking about it, then just don't worry about it. Pick someone else. Do you know what I mean? Like, rather than going, oh, it's sort of annoying, but I must get it, so I'm going to get through the annoyance. It's like, whereas when you're just, like, what I used to find was that I found it really delightful. People talking about things just light me up. It was so fun. And that was what made me want to keep listening to it when I didn't think I was really getting anything. And it's actually that feeling of enjoyment is the getting of it. It's just, it doesn't come to your conscious mind until it does. But kind of on a deeper level, you are totally getting it whenever you're in a good feeling in any space.
I think for me it was Somebody Should Have Told Us by Jack Pransky's book. And it just, I've read a lot of books. I've probably read every book that everyone's written on the principles. And for that, but it really felt as if it was a friend speaking to me.
Yeah, well, I found all that stuff tiring, just having to learn all these techniques and everything, and this just made sense to me. And there's a great question you asked, because everyone who comes across this and sees something has that same problem. It's not like you get it straight away. It's just, you know, at times, I read Michael Neill's book first, and I saw something, read it again, where the bloody hell is it?
Where's the secret?
Yeah, where's the secret? It's like, the best thing I could say is be curious about it, and just look into it. Don't stop doing anything else you're doing, just look into it, and all of a sudden you will see something. I guess you've been around it for a long time. I guess you've seen examples where, you know, someone really doesn't see it and kind of for a long time, and then it changes. You must have seen that so many times. Yeah.
Sorry. Well, I was just going to say, I think there's almost a danger of it becoming separate to your life and who you are, because it's like a necessary thing, isn't it? Like, you have to give something a name. So because you have to give it a name, it's like it becomes a thing that's outside of you. And I think what is interesting to me, and as I've moved along, is that I've kind of, firstly, I've started to go, as I get an insight, I go, oh, but I think I kind of knew that. I just forgot that I knew it. It's like there's something about it's already there, and it's already who you are and who we are. So it's not like an external goal. And the second thing is that the more that I go along, the more I start to look back on my life before I heard of the principles and go, oh yeah, that's what was happening then. You know, that when I had that experience and then this thing and I felt really peaceful, that was that system of mind, consciousness and thought working perfectly, and I didn't need to know it to intuitively experience it. So yeah, it's like we're in it, we are it, and we also get to look at it. And that's the bit that we're doing now.
It just limits that.
You can't put people in boxes, which is why I've been diagnosed with 6 different things, probably. You couldn't put me in a box, and every time I told them something else, they wanted to put me in another one. When actually I didn't fit in a box, because I was just me. And I was really struggling, and people just wanted to try and put me in boxes.
And that's the way I think a lot of humanity survives, because you need to feel you belong into a particular box, and if you don't, it's too scary. And if you're not labelled or part of a certain group or association, or you don't feel a part of it. Yet I really do believe in all this interconnectedness and not the boxes kind of thing. But I think it's hard to struggle to get out of that.
It is.
Makes sense of because the way our world is set up, that everybody likes to put us in boxes.
Do you know what? No, seriously, because I was diagnosed from the age of 18 with different things. Last year, I kind of got to the point where, well, this is really, really helping me. But if I don't have a label, who am I? Because it'd been around there for such a long time, and if it wasn't for the 3 Principles community and the friends that I got, I don't think I would have got out of it, if I'm honest. I think I would have been like, yep, can see the 3 Principles, but I'm still this. And I don't know where that gap is and whether I would have ever got there.
Well, I think there's a certain innocence that people are under a misunderstanding that we are fixed. We are kind of fixed kinds of people, and so people try to fix us into categories to help us. And the field is just done an innocent misunderstanding. They're not kind of doing it on purpose. It's just that they don't understand. My little nephew Archie doesn't understand if he jumps on the sofa he could fall off and hurts himself. Because he doesn't understand gravity, and the field just doesn't understand nature. It's not a judgment. Just
they're doing it innocently, but.
And I think the more Steve's done such a great job of bringing us all together and getting lots of different speakers. So thank you. I'm very appreciative for that. The more we all just have a conversation as a human race, the more we communicate and we all help one another correct that misunderstanding of where our experience is coming from, then the institutions will change as well, So it's going to happen from the inside out, and it will take a bit of time, but every great breakthrough in science has taken a while before it becomes form in the physical world. And, when I think back on what they were doing to people in mental health institutions 100 years ago compared to what they're doing now, and the future of it is an unavoidable evolution. Our colleagues calls it an unavoidable evolution. And so it's just being okay with where we're at, and if we can be of service to others, that's great.
Yeah. I think George Pransky has a story, and you might see him if you go on the 3 Principles Movies website, or whoever was asking about that. Obviously it used to be doctors and stuff. We didn't really realise about germs and the nature of germs and how they're transmitted. So we would use dirty knives to perform operations on people and not understand why people were more likely to die if they had an operation than not, and the death rate was really high, and didn't understand about the way diseases are transmitted. So a doctor would do like an operation with somebody who's infectious and then go and visit every woman who's just had a child on a maternity ward, and obviously create that transmission of that illness that way. And it was such amazing. I mean, this is a really good. It's a really good metaphor in a way for, like, the kind of three principles understanding of how we experience reality versus the kind of mainstream understanding of how we experience reality, which is that when you understand germs and how they behave on that sort of particle level, you entirely would behave differently. You wouldn't dream of not washing your hands or not sterilising equipment. But when you don't know, like, there's no reason why you ever would. And in his story, I don't know this is his story, which I love, but he said it took 50 years from the time when we actually discovered germ theory to when it was common mainstream practice for instruments to be sterilised.
But also the guy which first came up with it ended up in a mental institution and ended up dying of septicemia because people didn't believe him.
No.
Yeah, if you're the
Let's hope that doesn't happen to
us.
But that, it's like when an idea is true, it won't die. So this poor chap, that is terrible that's happened to that guy, but the idea didn't die.
Yeah.
And now we wouldn't dream of not doing it. You know, or now that's the mainstream understanding. It's not always perfect, but yeah.
You know, working it every day.
So what's our...
I think that's about time.
Do you think we're getting there? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's a big goodbye.